start with the homework. This is what we're going to do today. We're going to go the first 45 minutes. We're going to talk about the case studies of Oprah, Starbucks, and Washington Post. Then we're going to do a short exercise with these case studies. Then we're going to go into a power and status discussion. And we're going to watch a video, a Stanford video. Can you pass out, Carmen, the first Living with Values presentations? You're going to get the presentation passed out to you right now, the one that we're going to go through, so you can have that and you can put it in your binders. We're going to go through power and status and how do our cultural behaviors differ from institutionalized power, and how do we manage that, and should we, or how do we adapt, do we choose to, in other words, put on the act, but at the same time know that it's for a greater purpose. And this is why, ladies, the True North books are so important that you read, because everything, well, things you're going to learn today, I shouldn't give it away. People say, you always give everything away. I just get so excited. I know what you're going to go through, and I'm like, okay. So let me just briefly tell you that you're going to experience different feelings today when you are confronted with information that is just not fair. And it is what it is. Therefore, if you don't have a greater purpose, you can easily derail. Okay? And that means that you start adapting to behaviors that are not ethical or aligned with your values because it's the only way to survive, you feel, and it's the only way to move up in the organization at times. And it's not because it's a bad organization. It's an organization, it's hierarchy. And when there's hierarchy, there's different, people are really, they are struggling for resources, and they're competing for resources. So human nature, right? So we're going to discuss and go through how to be able to manage everything that you go through organizationally. So first, let's start with living your values. Okay, so how many of you read the Oprah? How many of you did your homework? Please raise it. Raise your hand. Okay, how many of you did not? Oh, ladies, I'm so proud of you, because it's going to be an oral test. Just kidding. So let's talk about, we're going to start with the Oprah case study. These case studies had to do with authentic values and leadership principles and ethical boundaries. So if you remember with True North, our authentic values, our core values, in order to make them effective in our everyday life, we transform those into leadership principles, right? So, and then those leadership principles, we have ethical boundaries around them to decide what I should do, what I shouldn't do. And so to give you an example, for myself, my values are about equality, treating people well, living life to the fullest, meaning that there's nothing in the world I cannot do if I really want it. I am my greatest limitation. So how do I turn that into principles well, it's easy, I teach that, right? So I created a business that allows me to live my principles, which is what Oprah did and Howard Schultz. They created a business model that embedded their values and leadership principles into it. So when people tell you, you can't do that, it's not possible, people have created entire institutions based on their leadership principles. It's just being creative about how you do it. Now, many people say, well, I'm in a small, I run a group of 15 people. I have a team of 10. How can I do it? I'm only like a senior manager or a director. I said, you're not supposed to do it for the entire institution. Your job is to do it for the people you lead, right? So you really do become an independent. You have to see it as this is your little world that has to be embedded and work with the bigger world, which is the entire organization. But you can only control so much. Therefore, what is it that you control? And for what you control, what can you do to align with these values that you want to teach your people, your team? So ethical boundaries is you have to create a question or something that's going to keep you on check. Okay? And what I mean by that is my ethical boundary is one question. And this one question will tell me whether or not I should go there and make that decision. That one question is, would my daughter be proud? Would my daughter be proud? If it's a business decision, if I make this decision, if my daughter found out, would she be proud? If, 20 years from now, she reads, my diary or whatever, if she read about it, would she be proud? If she wouldn't be proud, then I'm not going to do it, period. And most people think, like, what does your daughter have to do with business? And I said, everything. okay? Because when I go to work or when I'm teaching or when I'm consulting, I don't change who I am. I might adapt and flex my leadership style to adapt to the situation, but my core principles do not change, and they shouldn't change. And that's when people derail, because they adjust. When you don't have strong leadership principles, you'll adjust and adapt to whatever the need is from the core. Now, you're supposed to adjust and adapt via tools, strategies, demeanor sometimes, but never from your core principles and values. That's why the first 4 days were all about self-awareness, because without self-awareness, everything else is irrelevant. So from what I heard, you guys are really self-aware. I mean, you guys you want to teach self-awareness now to people. I mean, it's great. I'm glad to hear that now you're watching your environment a lot more. You're seeing how you respond. And it's going to be great to hear people's stories a little bit after lunch. But if you don't have those core values that you turn into leadership principles, then you will easily be able to say, oh, I'll take that one. Or, you know, I don't know why that's not too bad. Or maybe I don't know, really quick before we get into the Oprah case study, I want to tell you a quick story of how I was called into question with my leadership values, leadership principles. And I had a big contract with one of the telecommunications company. I won't say the name, but there's only 2 big ones, right? And it was a big contract. I was brought on to, 1, be a spokesperson for their domestic violence campaign, 2, create a creative, strategic plan to bring in 6 different universities in California and 72 student organizations, Latino student organizations, Latino fraternities, sororities, as partners in this program, and then do a call out for student heroes of domestic violence, and then be able to present them. And then we do a tour where we would go to each school and have a panel of these survivors talk about their experiences for domestic violence awareness and dating awareness, dating violence awareness. And then we would honor them with congressional proclamations, and it was on TV. So we had this great, wonderful campaign. So they hired me 3 different contracts. 1 spokesperson, 1 creative, a creative consultant, and the other one was branding. So the good thing is they had to pay me a fee just to use my name. That was really cool. And the other one was the creative consultant fee, and then the actual creating the program. So what happened was that the student, okay, we picked the survivors of domestic violence. These students were supposed to come and fly into Los Angeles. The day before they were going to fly in, I was called and told these kids need to go through media training, intense media training, because they're going to represent this telecommunications company. And I said, media training? Yes, we have to tell them how many times they have to say our name. We have to tell them, you know, how they should talk, you know, when not to stutter, this, and that, you know, because remember, their image is our image. I was really upset, first of all. And I said, do you realize that these students, some of them have never shared their story before? This is going to be the first time, and how brave they are to share their story with others. This is part of their healing process. And you want them to be actors? Oh, not actors, maybe just a little bit. And I said, and so the part of me that is a protector, you know, I call him Mama Bear, I automatically went into emotion. I was like, well, I can't do that. I cannot ask them to do that. You know, it goes against everything I believe in. I'm here to protect you. I gave them my word that I would protect them, make sure nothing happened to them. This is a very vulnerable time for them, but they're stepping up. This is a huge risk for them. And they're like, well, we got to do it, or we're pulling the plug on the whole program. Okay, so, and this, I mean, they were already flying in. There was a great investment, and they didn't care losing the money because they were such a big company. So I had a choice to make. I can either play the game, play good, have them come in, media train them, have a great relationship with this organization, and get a contract next year. Or tell them I'm not going to do it. Pull the plug. So what do you guys think I did? How do you know? You guys know me already, huh? Yeah, well, I basically said, if you're going to put these students in this position, I'm not going to do it. And this is like $400,000 contract. Okay, so this is not like a $20,000 contract, you know, where you can say, oh, no big deal. I mean, literally, I was willing to not have this contract again. But you know what's amazing? I didn't even think twice. It wasn't like, let me think about it. It was like, absolutely not. Because the $400,000, that's great and dandy, that comes and goes. But how I feel about protecting these students, and I gave them my word, that's forever. So I basically said, well, you know what, then pull the plug. They didn't think I would say that. So they said, okay, forget it, we don't have to media train them. But then they had it set up that they were going to media train them behind my back. Yeah. So I didn't know this, right? So the day of the event came, and it was here at USC at the Boulevard Auditorium, and we had 600 people. We bussed in a lot of the high schools and students. And next thing you know, the students came up to me, the survivors, and said, you know, there's a media company outside, and they're pulling us one by one out there because there's certain things they want us to say. Oh, I was so upset, right? And so I said, all of you, come into my dressing room. You stay here. Don't go anywhere without me. In other words, I take a step, you take a step. Okay? And they're like, okay, they're looking at me. And I said, no, I felt like now I really needed to protect them. And the organization, their representatives were like, what's going on? And I said, you know, I don't even want to discuss this. We need to move forward. And I knew our relationship was over there. I mean, if that's happening, I can't trust them where they're doing that because of their image. I wasn't going to let anything wrong happen. But I understand this is a marketing program for them. And for me, it was about helping the students heal. So what I realized later is that the value of the organization and my values were not aligned. And when that happens, you're going to have big problems. So my question to you, are your organization's values aligned with yours? Because if they're not, you're going to find yourself stuck, and you're going to find yourself always struggling internally. So Latinas, the beautiful thing about us is even if we want to go against our values, we can't sometimes, right? We're like, God, I wish I wasn't like so honest, you know? Maybe, you know, but that's who we are for the most part, which is something I'm very proud of. But I can tell you right now, you will have to make sacrifices. Things will happen, you'll have to make decisions, and it's up to you to decide whether or not you're okay with it. See, the great thing is that when you know your values and you're so aligned with them, you can walk away from $400,000 and be okay with it and feel good about it. But when you're not, then you're going to be struggling. So that's an example of how important it is to be aligned with your values when you're going to make, right now you're just starting, ladies. I mean, you have so much ahead of you, and as you all become more and more successful, you're going to be confronted more and more with ethical issues. The higher you move up, the more ethical decisions you're going to have to make. Not because it's ugly, it's because you're going to have more responsibility, more resources to manage, more people to manage, and access will become more but less, meaning you're going to have bigger players in the game that are willing to do things that you would never do at your cost, and you have to take a step back where you can choose. But I can always tell you that at the end of the day, I can guarantee if you really align with your values, it always comes back, because it has for me. And it just always comes back one way or another. I ended up getting another contract for more after that. And I couldn't have taken this other contract if I had the other one because it was a conflict of interest. So I would have to turn it down. So it ended up being that I didn't get the $400,000 one, but I got another contract that was even more that I wouldn't be able to take if I would have stood with the other one. So I wasn't planning for that, but things do come around. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about Oprah's values. What did Oprah believe in? What were her values, her core values, some of them? Anybody? Telling the truth? Okay. No, right now, because we're going back and forth, not right now. We'll do it, yeah. We'll do it when we are more like not going back and forth. So, okay, telling the truth. So what I call living in truth. Why is truth so important to her?
She's in a field where you could really shape what truth is in broadcasting.
Okay. Exactly, because she's in an area, she's a voice, and her voice has a great impact, and she realized the impact she can make, and she took on that responsibility to make a great impact for a greater purpose. When many people have a voice that does impact and they choose not to do that, for the most part, most people, now we're not here to judge, but my philosophy is you always have a choice. You always have a choice. Okay, so living in truth, but where do you think it came from before she went on her show? Why is living in truth, even if she's not in broadcasting, why is it so important to her? Anybody? Yes?
Because she had to embrace her experiences.
Because she embraced her experiences?
She had a core upbringing with her grandmother in church.
Yes. And two reasons. Number one, she had a core, upbringing, her grandmother who was very strong for her. But also, she was sexually abused. And sexual abuse is all about silence and secrecy. Okay?
She lived a life for a while.
Yes, so her crucible was experiencing that she was not able to free herself. She stood in that shame because of secrecy and living in lies and denial. So what she did is took that crucible and she turned it around and used it as a value of her strength. I will live in truth, because if I live in truth, nothing like this could ever happen. And if I teach truth, maybe it won't happen to the rest of the kids. So this is how our crucibles can determine our values many of the times. So sometimes we say, do our crucibles determine our values, or do our values determine our crucibles? Which one do you think?
It depends on where they impact in your life.
Exactly. It depends where they impact in your life. For the most part, many times we go through things, we don't even realize we make a big decision at that moment about life, about something, and then that becomes a value we live by. And then I don't know where I got my values. If you think back, many of them had to do with crucibles that you went through. So it's about going back and really realizing, is this a value that still applies today? Is it a value that's contributing to me as a leader, as a more positive, or is it inhibiting me as a leader? Is it a value that maybe growing up you were taught you keep things in the family, or you don't talk about certain things, and now you get to work and you're supposed to communicate effectively with your team and you don't know how? Because you were never taught to communicate growing up, and you just don't talk about problems. So you have work problems, you have issues in your group, there's conflict, and you don't talk about them. You just kind of say, oh, they'll solve themselves, but they'll solve on their own. They'll go away in time. Give them time. That's the worst thing you could do, ladies. Let me tell you, they just get worse and worse. So it becomes a value to not necessarily communicate. It becomes a value for us to live a certain way. So, and it takes. You go to work with it and it impacts you, and that's what's important to understand, that the values you have impact you as a leader, and they impact your team. So it's important to be aware how those values become leadership principles. So how did her trust value, how did she embed that into a leadership principle? How does she transform it as a leadership principle she lives by and runs her company by? Yes. Girl, you did your homework, didn't you? Is it the pregnancy thing?
No, my girls wake up at 6 every morning.
Oh, okay.
So anyway, I think what happened is even in her contract negotiations, they even said get her 100%, so she owns it from the very beginning.
Exactly.
So when you buy her entire value system.
Exactly. Exactly. And it's, she has been my only role model my entire life. I've had nobody, and even though, to me, because she has suffered, she put it out there, she survived, and she still thrived. So to me, there was hope, after I went through everything. But what she did is that she embedded her values into her business, where if there's a contract that she's creating, it has to align with her values. She's not willing to do things that are not aligned with her values. For myself, I was called to do certain talk shows. I needed to have final say on them. They wouldn't give it to me because, it's a production company. I won't do them. I don't know if they're going to put me with, was it Jerry Springer the next day? I mean, they have the power to do that if I sign, right? So to me, I always say it's not about being on TV. It's about having a platform where I can have an impact for speaking the truth with the purpose, not just for being on TV. So she aligned her business. She created the values at work, where also she hires people who are known for their honesty. They get a lot of personal background check, where her people will call their family members. If you're going to get hired there, her people will call friends. They'll do an investigation to make sure your character is consistent with the company values. That's how serious she takes them, and people stay there for 20 years. People don't leave Oprah. Yes?
I think also part of the thing that she does really well is always be involved in every aspect of her business.
Exactly.
So I think even the case talked about her, signing every check and always being involved and walking the floor and staying true to, her values and portraying that to her team.
So my question is, how do you manage your team where you're involved in all areas of leadership with your team, but yet let them, empower them to be leaders themselves. How do you do it? Yes?
You choose the core people that you want to work with that have the same sort of values that you do and have the same thinking of what needs to happen. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to trust them and empower them.
Okay, so what if you inherit a team? Which happens a lot. You know, you're in here, here's 5 team members, good luck. These are all troublemakers. Okay, hold on, yes? Oh, wow, are you trying to tell us something? How do you know?
Well, usually, I've inherited teams a few times, but typically what you want to do obviously is first, get to acclimate, get to know them, interview them, try to, even look at their past reviews, but not so much because that may not be a true reflection in case the other manager, whatever. But as soon as you get to know them a little bit better.
Can you speak a little louder, sir?
Sure, as soon as you get to know them a little bit better, then you can start to really understand if that is the job even for them.
Exactly, if this is a good job fit, yeah.
Right, and at that point, see whether it's an issue of motivation or whether it's an issue that they're good or whether it's an issue of maybe they just don't have the knowledge. Really just understanding what's the problem, if there is a problem. And if not, then just continue coaching them in a certain direction.
Okay.
Yeah. 'Cause sometimes it's
Over here and then over here. Okay, got it, yes.
One thing that I do is I'm just very straightforward to them right away about what my values are and what I'm like and what I'm about. I mean, in a nice way.
Like, this is who I am, take it or leave it, and it's going to go like this?
I really tell them a little bit about where I came from and how that was formed and who I am. And I think it's great to know from the beginning, and then they can see it. The majority of the time they end up adapting to that, and they actually appreciate that I'm like that. I'm so straightforward. They say, oh, nobody's ever told us this, etc. So I think it's just good to really set expectations of what you're about, because then they're gonna understand the way you're acting is because you are a certain way.
Consistency of character.
How this affects them positively, like how this is gonna really work for them.
Yes.
Benefit.
Okay,
It's not just ourselves.
thank you, yes.
And I think too, when I came into this company, there was no clear organizational value, vision, mission. I mean, the basics. The company was just working, so it was a team, but nobody was working together. It was like this person would tell this person to do that, but there was never a flow. So
There was no systems put in
There's
place.
been 80% turnover since I got there. Yeah, but it's a lot of identifying the right people.
Exactly.
The people weeding themselves out. It's like, look, what is the company mission? You want to be part of this? We're having this group session. We did it in 3 sessions. This is where the company is going. This is where the company owners see it. This is where the team sees it. How do we bring that together? So it was a lot of people weeded themselves out. People thought that's not where they belonged. After 9 years, they felt like, well, I don't want the company going this way, but it wasn't about them. It becomes, again, it's team. And a lot of the people that weeded themselves out always started their sentences with, well, I need. It's not about what you need, it's what we
need.
And one of the persons that actually left, she actually called me about 2 months ago, and this is the troublemaker. Like it became a personal vendetta against me. So anything that had
you had one of those.
Anything that had my name on it was like, how do we not make it work? But I never reacted to it. It was
Good.
very much, I understand where she's coming from. I'm a new person coming to this company. She's been here 5 years. She was the leadership role, that position. I came in, things changed. I mean, from even dress attire, it's like, no, we're not doing this. Everybody, it's a lot of little changes that were big. My downfall was that I came in very strong. I did come in like, well, we need to make this change.
Yes. That is the number one mistake most leaders make.
Definitely.
And when they come in, they have to earn the trust of people. They come in, I'm the leader, I was picked.
Yeah.
So this is where it's going to
kind of like, okay, well, this is the things we need to do. What do you guys think? But I wasn't listening.
It wasn't like, tell me what you've been doing, what's been working, what hasn't been working. Maybe what hasn't been working, maybe we can change this and implement this. What do you think? Or do you have any ideas? Yeah.
It took me like 3 months to get there, and I did own up to it. In our meeting, like 3 months later, I called everybody out. It's like you have those meetings, and it was like the elephant was there, and nobody was addressing it. And I got up and I said, I apologize. I said, I came in here exactly what you just said. I said, so let's start over.
Did they start out? Were they willing to start over?
They were. Some of them understood where I was coming from now because they saw that changes were positive. It's just taking them into account. So it was like, let's start over if you guys want to. And at that point, I did withdraw myself. I said, I will leave this company if me being here is not helping the overall group.
Very good. Very good move and very good thing to say because it shows your commitment. Yeah.
And it was genuine. I had met with my boss before this meeting. Fortune 500, I help that company versus I help this company down.
Yes.
With that said, it's the group now, we're a very strong group. The people that weeded themselves out, this one person called me a month ago and said, I want to come back to the team. She's like, I need to meet with you on a one-to-one. I said, fine. My boss calls me and he's like, I want you to just be open. I'm like, I am open. I never had a problem with her. She wants to come back, we need her. She's our missing link. And I reaffirmed that to her, but I also told her, these are the values the team has now. This is how the team is running now. This is what a great team we have now. If you're coming back to this team, forgetting what, with all the issues we had before. So it's been very, there's the good days, and you can see it's going back to bad days, and then, but it's an open environment now where she knows it's like, okay, let's calm down, let's talk about it. So the last month has been very challenging, because it's like tiptoeing, eggshell, let's get there, build that trust. Let's not bring that team back to what the old team was.
Well, you're going to learn a lot of things here where you're going to take back, and you could be like, how come you didn't go to this program before?
I know.
Yeah, a lot of the women are going like, who are you? Where'd you come from, and can you go back, and can I go? And I had someone say, can non-Latinas go? Can me, she's a white, like an Anglo woman, I'm white, can I go? They were asking in the Latina, and it was funny because we're like, yeah, we got to create a multicultural program. I'm like, okay, one thing at a time, right? But thank you. And actually, and everything that you guys said is absolutely true. There's 3 elements that I can guarantee if you set these elements in place from the very beginning, whether you inherit a team or it's a new team, you should be on track. Number 1, you set the standards for the group, okay? People say you let the group set their own standards. I disagree. I agree when they're working on their own, but I have to set like a standard as a boss, as a leader. There's certain standards. For me, the standards are, there's no criticizing here, there's no judging. We're here to help each other. If you don't want to help the other person, tell me now, because I can find a way for you to go to another team. I don't mess around in the sense of we're all working here together, because when you don't, you're literally wasting about 40% productivity time. Statistics research shows that you only really get 60% of your people when you don't have standards and expectations set within the group. Okay, so whatever those standards are, make them very clear. So when new comes in the group, you tell them also. Number 2, you set expectations. 1 is standards, number 2, expectations. This is what I expect from you guys. I expect you to come to me when you have an issue. I promise you I will do it. And then you make your commitment. I expect you to communicate with each other to solve any conflict or problem. If you can't solve it, then you come to me. Okay? Yes?
Would you say standards are more like creating the culture, and then the expectations would be more like the job description?
Yes, the culture, standards, culture, expectations are more job expectation, but more is group behavior. How you're going to behave. You can behave however you want at home and with your boyfriend and stuff, but when you're in this group, this is how you're going to behave. You have to mold that behavior. Okay, you have to, from the very beginning, you have to mold that behavior. I'm all about empowering and being independent, but people need a leader. And when they're a group, people need a leader. They need something to follow. And number 3, and the most important, is show by example. Don't ever, ladies, ever tell them to do something you're not willing to do. Because then they won't have any respect for the rules, for the expectations, for the standards, or for you. Why should they? It's like, well, you don't live by what you teach. And when you do maybe mess up, as we all do, call yourself out on it. Like, you know what? I know I said I wasn't going to be late, but I know I was, and I know that goes against whatever expectation, and I'm sorry, and I'm working on it, but you know what? I'm going to make, you're human. They need to see that, okay? Okay, so now let's talk about Howard Schultz, Starbucks, really. We have, what, 5 minutes? Hey, she's keeping me on time here. I'm like, I promise I'll listen to you, okay? I'm going to keep me on time, because if not, we'll go on forever. Okay, so Howard Schultz, he had a crucible when he was young, which was his greatest crucible. What was it? His father. He saw his father work jobs. His father was bitter because he couldn't get ahead. He worked jobs. He wasn't educated, therefore, he was always just feeling bad about not being able to give the family more, and then he got hurt and he couldn't work, and he got fired and they had no health insurance. That traumatized him, but it inspired him. Okay? So this is where I call when your greatest tragedies can become your greatest gifts. And it's perspective, it's how you choose to see them that will determine whether they stay as tragedies or you convert them into gifts. It's a personal choice. It truly is. He could have sat there and said, well, you know, I'm just going to continue like my dad. But he chose that he was going to create a company that was going to give health benefits to people that, you know, to part-timers, and was going to be about the culture. So not only did he embed it in the system, he created an entire business model around his principles. How did he do that? What did you guys pick up from the case study? How did he go about that? Yes?
He first started out with the core decision to make his company the kind of company that his father should have worked at.
Yes.
By listening to employees, making them understand that the customer experience was very, very important, that the people, that when they get up in the morning, it should be home, Starbucks, work. That should be just a normal part of their day, and ingraining that by listening to customers, listening to employees, their suggestions, listening to the suggestions of the customers as they come in, and creating an environment where people felt like they were a part of the company and not working for it, but actually a part of the company with stock ownership, they had huge...
They had ownership. They had buy-in into it. They wanted to protect it. They wanted to give it the best because it was part of them. Instead of working for someone, they're working for themselves. Because that's how, thank you. Yes, absolutely, yes.
He had an interesting, he lived in Bayview, which was a projects for lower-income people, and I grew up in a projects for a short time, but he had the opportunity to live in a diverse neighborhood where he saw people of all nationalities, and that built a foundation because he realized that all people just wanted respect and dignity, the same thing that his father was requesting.
All people just wanted respect and dignity. Exactly. And those are basics, and these are human needs that a lot of leaders forget. They just think of process, and they just think of, you know, objectives, and they forget about people. Yes?
I like too how he kept himself humble by traveling to the different parts of the world and speak with the rabbis.
Yes, kept himself humble by going to different parts of the world. This is his ethical boundaries. This is where he knows that if he does not keep himself on check, if he does not keep himself humble, that he will derail. Okay, so he works at going to places and doing things. He prepares and plans for it to be able to stay humble. He knows how important it is. Now, he also created this culture that then he created something that most people and most companies don't ever create. He created a need. He created a need, and then he has to fulfill a need that didn't exist, so he created the need first. See, to me, that's just brilliant, right? So my question to you is, how can you create a need as a leader in your business that you can fulfill, that does not currently exist? In other words, what need maybe people don't know they need? Okay? That you have one already? Good. Yes.
People, day in and day out, they know they need to plan financially, but they just don't feel the urgency.
Yes.
There's no urgency whatsoever for
Because it's survival day by day for them, right?
So, like, to really, I don't know how you can just...
Make them go through a crucible. No, just kidding. No, believe me, I know what you mean. So the thing is that you see it and you're like, ugh. You have to, in order to create the urgency, sense of urgency, people have to go through an experience where they feel they need to. See, most people, they either act because of pain or pleasure. Mostly because of pain, but second is pleasure. If it's too painful, they want to get out of it, so they'll act. If it's pleasurable, they'll move towards it, but it has to be very pleasurable for them to make that sacrifice. I mean, to actually put time into it.
I related a lot to the story because I lived that. You know, I came from, you know, assisted living, you know, where we had full welfare and stuff like that. And I think it was such a big struggle that, you know, I mean, I'm getting teary-eyed when I read it because it was a struggle my dad had too, you know, having jobs in and out and stuff like that. And when I was able to, you know, that's why I got into financing too, because it's like I didn't want to have that same up and down struggle and stuff like that. But I think that.
So you create that finance, your whole business based on that.
Exactly. And to me,
So your finance, your banking business career was based because of your experience with your father.
Yeah, and then you know, having being the same, you know, dignity, whether it was somebody that had tons of money or somebody just, you know, with $20 in their checking account. It was how I related to them and stuff like that.
And that's what makes, we have the connection with them. And it really helps us to be able to connect with people.
But you know, a lot of his journey, I'm like, oh my gosh, you know, I mean, I love Oprah, but as I read his story. It was like somebody else that, you know, I want to learn more.
And actually, I read his book, and the president and CEO of Starbucks for many years that helped him build this wrote a book called It's Not About Coffee. Okay, most people think it's about coffee. You can buy coffee anywhere, and people will stand in lines. People, even to now, Starbucks, it's about the experience. And my mom used to say, mija, pero si están ahí mucho tiempo, they're sitting in there, no compran. Right? Like, they don't buy, like, one cup of coffee and they sit there all day. You know, if you think about it, it doesn't make sense. But if you think, most people do not sit there. Most people come in and out. But they like the experience, the culture, and what it believes in. And the community. People are looking for community. A big part of this program is the community. Coming together, having similar experiences. So, what I want you to do, as we move on to the next part, I want you to write down one question I want you to answer during your homework time and during the next month. And that is, what need can I identify in my business, if you're a business owner, in my organization, if you work for somebody, in my organization, if you're a nonprofit, what need can I identify that currently is not being fulfilled? There might be a few. And then think, how can I align my leadership principles with the solution? I want to see you become Oprah and Howard Schultz in a mini version. Yes?
I think the only thing that troubled me about the Starbucks case study is that it is about creating an experience, but until Magic Johnson brought Starbucks to neglected communities, it was about creating an experience for a certain type of people.
Okay.
You know, based on socioeconomic.
Yes.
I didn't have a need for Starbucks until I moved to Westwood to do my undergrad.
Yes.
And when I came back home, there was no Starbucks in my community. And then I had a really desperate need. I was like driving around, 15 minutes out to Lakewood.
You're one of those, okay?
Until Magic Johnson developed a Starbucks in my side of town.
Yes.
But you know, and so that's.
No, I understand, and that's very, very, and we're going to talk, and it's interesting because I know I have to wrap up, but that's very interesting. One thing I say, it's only a Latina would say that, right? No, because I'm the same way. I'm like, wait a minute, what about, you know, us? What about East LA? What about us, you know, my people over here? So the question is, there's going to be business situations where you have to choose your market. Okay, you have to. That's the only way to survive. And for the most part, if you are in a socioeconomic low status, you cannot, it's not effective and efficient to spend $4 on a coffee or $5 on a coffee. I mean, so how do you bring Starbucks to the community when people can't afford it? So the question is, do you give up the business? Do you create a way for them to purchase the coffee, or do you create maybe something that's similar and that they can, you know, purchase? They created a community, something similar. That's a whole other business model they would have to create, and the whole other company or business aside, to fulfill a need that maybe is not really important to them. But I do believe there's a way. And why I say that is because this program is not cheap. Okay, this program, people that are paying here, you guys know it's not cheap. But I found a way. I wasn't going to do it unless I had scholarships. I wasn't going to do it unless there was women that couldn't afford to pay could come. If you had to pay yourself and there was no opportunity for scholarships, I'd rather not have it. Because it goes against everything I believe in about opportunity. So that's why the sponsorships are so important, because if it wasn't for sponsorships, a lot of you wouldn't be here, and it would only be the privileged Latinas, and I would not feel good about myself. So I agree with you, and I agree there's a way. Maybe he's just not evolved yet. Maybe you need to go teach him a few things. I'm just kidding. But yes, I think there is a way, and I think it takes women or certain people to look beyond just the bottom line. But their way of feeling better about it is we'll just give to the community, which is fine. Hey, give us some money. It's all good. Well, we'll take it. Yes?
Well, I think that there's two things that happened from that, knowing your business model. He needed a platform, and what his way of giving back was paying the bean growers the market rate.
Yes, he did. Yeah, he found different ways. And he's also the first company to have a chief community officer that pay, they pay them like $150,000. Their whole job is community, like a chief diversity officer, it's chief community officer. So they hired some civil rights activists, I know, to be their chief community, an African-American gentleman, last year. I don't know his name, I forgot. And one thing I read about Howard recently, Schultz, is that there was 3 people killed at a Starbucks not too long ago. It was like the biggest tragedy ever at a Starbucks. Somebody shot them. Yeah, it was like, so Howard Schultz went and spent a whole week with each of their families. A week.
And he banned guns from the stores.
Did he really? See, it gives me the chills. See, we got to give him some credit, guys. Come on. Yes.
I have a feeling, just based on everything that I have read about him, that Magic Johnson didn't find him. He found Magic. He probably realized that it was time to expand and went to the most visible person that he knew that could sell this to minority communities, and that would have been Magic. Because Magic was that kind of an entrepreneur at the time, and that he was developing businesses and shopping centers, I'll bet Howard found Magic. Magic didn't.
I'm sure you're probably right.
So I would imagine that he had the vision, that he knew he needed to expand, and then pick people that he knew could take his message in the right way out to the other communities to expand, so that now he is everywhere.
You're probably right, because I know Starbucks did go look for this community chief officer. Somebody didn't come to them and say, hey, you need to have a chief community officer. They went and searched and did their research to find the most active community activist. He was president of the civil rights, I don't know, it wasn't just African American, it was civil rights, and he left that job to be the first chief community officer, so they did seek him out.
When I was at Cal State Long Beach, we did a case study, and I know this was because of our group, and I was the only Latina in the group where they didn't add cinnamon to sugar yet, to cereal.
They what? I'm sorry?
Didn't add cinnamon flavoring.
Oh, cinnamon, okay,
And
okay.
now you see all these cereals now with cinnamon, because
Yes.
the Latinos love cinnamon in our coffee,
Yes.
whatever. So Starbucks also did research, which they're very smart. They started bringing in the healthy drinks and the chai teas and so forth, but they also brought in cinnamon because we like to add it to our coffee. So now you'll see it on their counters, and that just happened a few years ago when they brought the cinnamon in for the Hispanic communities.
Yes, and there's reasons to do it for purposes of a business model to increase revenue, therefore profits, and sometimes people that really care will do it. They don't need to even make money. They might break even. I mean, you don't lose money either, but they do it because there's a need, and they see that maybe these people can't pay enough or pay too much, but it's part of their contribution. It's okay. No, last question, then we'll move on. No. Dee Dee, you're really going today. I know. Those babies are like, let's go, mommy.
No, just because I read his book, so I'm really inspired by it. But anyway, there's this thing in marketing, I don't know if you guys see marketing course, called the halo effect. And they use him as an example because like the bottle of Ethos is $5, but everyone knows that $2 or whatever it is of the bottle of water goes back to low income or the villages in Africa.
Yes.
And so in a lot of case studies, they use that halo effect to, when they're talking about Starbucks, because people know that they'll pay $5.
And half of it's going, so they feel better about it, absolutely. Yes, exactly. So the last part of that question I want you to do the next month, the part of the need, and then I want you to let's say you did that, you found a need, and then how can you fulfill that need? Another one, number 2, is what don't people think they need that they need? In other words, come on, we got to go deep now. In other words, Howard knew they needed community or wanted community, but how can these people didn't say, I want community, let's build a Starbucks, but he was able to see community, and he was able to see coffee and the experience and put it together because he saw it when he was traveling or something. So what have you seen out in the world maybe that applies to your work now or your leadership position or your business that maybe you thought, people need that. They just don't know if they need that, or this can help people. It's just showing them how it can help them. Like maybe, these services can really help people, but it's just positioning and framing them in a way that are attractive to, all these ways haven't worked. And I can tell you one thing, there's somebody that I think I told you guys, somebody wants to come in here and do financial kind of investment. And I said, first you have to show women how to have a relationship with money, right? So maybe that's who knows? I'm just saying we got to go where the truth is. And the truth is Latinos and Latinas, for the most part, a lot of us don't feel comfortable with money yet being able to build wealth and being able to plan. We just kind of want to stay away from it, just as long as it pays the bills, right? So you might want to think about, okay, there's a need to be psychologically be able to feel good about money. So how can I fulfill that need and at the same time, as a business as a leadership principle, created part of the business model or a sample or try it out. I mean, I don't know, I'm just thinking out loud. But what I'm saying is that we want sometimes to bring products and services to businesses because we think, yes, this is what they need, but we don't think about the core need. And that's why they don't succeed. Why are they purchasing these products or services? What emotional need are they trying to fulfill? What human need are you trying to fulfill? So with that, and we try to get ahead of the game. We try to teach them how to financially plan when they're not even comfortable with money in the first place. So we're going to keep banging our heads against the wall because we're not getting them at the core, right? So another aspect of, for this program, it has to be the reason why we have women at certain status, because if you're not at that status, you might not be emotionally ready to hear the truth, right? I mean, in other words, you know me, do you really want to know the truth, right? Tell me, do you really want to? So they're at a different level where they need to break some breakthroughs. If you're at a certain level like you are here, you have gone through certain things in life already that puts you in a more prepared state. Okay? So we're going to move on. Okay, well, and so I want you to think about those two homework questions. You'll discuss them during your groups. And I want to move on to talking about power. Okay? Because if not, I know us. We can talk all day long here. Oh, no. I should.
Yeah, but they can have like 5 minutes.
Okay, let's do this. I want you to find a partner at your table. Okay, and I want you to share with your partner. 3 minutes. Shh, listen up. Listen up. 3 minutes each side, each partner. I want you to share with your partner how your values have converted into your leadership principles and how you're applying your leadership principles as a leader at work. If you still have not converted them, or if you still have not, you have your values but you don't know how to turn them into leadership principles, then ask your partner for help. What do you think? Ask for their opinion to help you, and then you can get some feedback back and forth, okay? You have 3 minutes each. Go ahead.